just northwest of Dayton.
And it looks like a war zone. The houses are destroyed. The trees are almost all down. Cars are turned over. Roofs are gone over most of the houses.
Several people also reported injured. The National Weather Service says these were large and dangerous storms.
We don't know how strong they were because there hasn't been a disaster survey yet, because it's just way too soon.
Meteorologist David Roth at the Severe Storm Prediction Center. So much debris on the highways in the Dayton area, the road crews have pulled out the snowplows to try and clear them. Earlier, tornadoes were reported in Indiana, Iowa, and Minnesota as well. A man carrying a knife in each hand and screaming, "I will kill you," attacked a group of schoolgirls waiting at a bus stop just outside Tokyo early Tuesday, killing 2 and injuring 16 before taking his own life. Most of the victims were schoolgirls who were lined up at a bus stop in the city of Kawasaki when a man in his 40s or 50s began slashing them. Japanese media, quoting police, say the suspect died after cutting himself in the neck. This as President Trump concluded his weekend visit to Japan with a speech aboard the USS Wasp, an amphibious assault vessel anchored just offshore.
You defend our freedom, our families, and you defend our great American flag.
The president also visited a Japanese naval vessel after talks with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and a meeting with Japan's new emperor. The president is now headed for home. A Colorado mountain climber has died shortly after getting to the top of Mount Everest. Christopher Coolish, a 62-year-old Boulder attorney, died Monday just after achieving his dream of scaling the highest peaks on each of the 7 continents. This is Fox News.
The sky's the limit with Bank Pacific's secure MyCloud banking. You can access your account 24/7 with your smartphone, your computer, your iPad, or any other tablet. You can pay bills, set up alerts, check your balances, wire transfer money. It's never been easier. Enroll online or come on in and see one of our friendly staff. Digital Life, Digital Solutions. Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Get a half-gallon of Minute Maid orange juice for only $1.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a half-gallon of Dairy Gold milk for only $1.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a $7 meal for only $1.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Last year's eruption of Hawaii's Kilauea volcano costing the state millions of dollars in tourism revenue.
Communities near Hawaii Volcanoes National Park lost as much as $94 million, according to the National Park Service. Kilauea volcano began erupting a year ago this month, destroying hundreds of homes and burying the area in about 80 feet of hardened lava. The federal numbers show the eruption also eroded the impact of jobs on the area. Spending at the parks supported slightly more than 1,000 jobs last year. That's about 1,000 fewer than in 2017. The Hawaii Park was closed for more than 4 months because of Kilauea. Federal officials say the revenue drop is not surprising. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel says she'd like to see a quick agreement on who should run the European Union's executive branch, a matter on which her governing coalition is so far divided. These are her first comments on the outcome of the European parliamentary elections. Merkel said both she and her center-right bloc and the left-center coalition partners back the idea that the head of the EU's Executive Commission should be a politician who ran for that job. In Brazil, authorities say 42 inmates have been found dead at least 3 different prison camps in the capital of the northern state of Amazonas, a day after 15 prisoners died in a riot at a 4th prison in that city. Israel's newly elected parliament has passed a preliminary motion to dissolve itself. This move comes as a deadline to form a coalition government is just 2 days away. There's no progress in sight. It would set the stage for a potential second election in Israel this year. James Holzhauer's Jeopardy winning streak still going strong. He could be on track to surpass Ken Jennings' record earnings in the next month. Monday, he won his 28th straight game with an additional $130,222 in winnings. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Business travel just got easier. Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 Data-to-Go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is data to go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That rapping you heard was me pounding on the table to once again emphasize the importance of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, one of the 10 parts of the Bill of Rights that I hold so dear here on Tall Tales, and I spent a fair amount of time talking about them, hoping that our government and our people will secure and protect those individual rights against all challengers, such as identity politics, socialism, cultural Marxism, postmodernism, and you name it. One of those groups that would be attacking our constitutional rights are what we could call the anti-gunners. And the anti-gunners are folks that would do away with the Second Amendment if they had a large enough eraser to just erase it off the constitutional blackboard. And as part of the erasing technique is economic warfare. And I've got a post here from one of my favorite websites, Bearing Arms. It's a website that's operated by a gentleman named Tom Knighton, who's always keeping us up to date on the Second Amendment, what it means, who's for it, who's against it, and who's trying to take it away from us. And the latest wrinkle is that the state of New York is attempting to do away with the National Rifle Association, the NRA, and by doing so, silencing an important voice in the entire Second Amendment latch-up. And on more than one occasion, I've mentioned the connection between the First and Second Amendment rights. If we were to lose our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances, etc., all the rest of the Bill of Rights would be in danger. And that's exactly where we are right now. So here's Tom's latest piece. It's titled, Conservative Group Offers Counter to Anti-Gun Investor Activism. And the anti-gun investor activism is the commercial attack on your Second Amendment rights. And here's how the article starts. While anti-gun investment groups have routinely sought to disrupt the firearms industry from within, pro-gun groups have mostly remained silent. For the most part, such activist investors have accomplished little more than requiring companies to waste money on studies. But if they continue to be able to tout, quote, wins, their numbers, and by extension their ability to govern the firearm industry, will only grow. Luckily, one right-leaning nonprofit is looking to provide a counter to that, and the name of it is called Americans for Tax Reform. They've announced a new project designed to counter activist investors who have passed resolutions potentially damaging to gun companies and other corporations as a means of achieving a political goal. Americans for Tax Reform feels there is a need to protect the long-term interests of small investors and pension fund beneficiaries from activist shareholders, proctors, proxy advisory firms, and Washington proposals that use financial institutions as the venue to enact the social and political agenda of the few. That cannot be accomplished through the legislative process. James Sutherland, executive director of the newly formed Shareholder Advocacy Forum, told the Washington Free Beacon, the Shareholder Advocacy Forum will provide a voice for these shareholders and hold executives and the directors accountable when they prioritize activist proposals ahead of their fiduciary responsibility. The group wants to counter activist investor groups who seek to force social justice. Now, whenever you hear that word, social justice, grab your billfold, grab your wallet, grab your bank book, grab your checkbook, because the social justice warriors want to take money away from you to spend it on social justice programs. So the group wants to counter active investor groups who seek to force social justice change onto companies. Perhaps most famously, such a group pressured Smith & Wesson to conduct a study to look at the viability of smart gun technology. Of course, the company found it wasn't viable, but it didn't need the study for that. We all know that it's not feasible. Neither are a lot of technologies anti-gunners want to see implemented. The Americans for Tax Reform wants to counter groups like this and said it intends to protect the long-term interests of shareholders. The new Shareholder Advocacy Forum said it will take a number of different steps to effectively negate the efforts of these activists, including opposing legislation the groups believes will be used by them. They sent their first letter opposing legislation to members of the House Financial Services Committee last week to voice their concerns with H.R. 2364. And by the way, we have a member on the House Financial Services Committee. Not too bad, huh? Everyone out there who wants to cry about how much we're victimized by the United States probably won't like the sound of it, but here we are with our member, Mike San Nicolas, on that very important committee. H.R. 2364, the Investor Choice Against Gun Proliferation Act, would require financial institutions to file disclosures that indicate if they have, quote, substantial financial relationship with manufacturer or dealer of firearms or ammunition. The legislation would not protect investors but lead to further demonization of the firearms industry. And that's what we're talking about, the demonization of the firearms industry, so that firearms, guns, etc., become code words that mean bad things because the left has so demonized them. The project launched with a letter of opposition to H.R. 2364 because we feel that private businesses should not be forced to disclose who they do business with, and the Securities Exchange Commission would be politicized by forcing the regulator to monitor which companies do business with businesses in the firearms industry. Unfortunately, Tom says, I'm not sure how effective this strategy will be. I tend to favor a more direct approach to countering such groups, namely by creating our own, not just to invest defensively, but also to go after anti-gun companies. Turnabout is fair play, is the old saying. So that's today's words of wisdom concerning the Second Amendment. And here it is, Tuesday, the 28th of May, Tuesday is my second most favorite day of the week. Of course, Monday is my most favorite day of the week because on Monday we've got 5 whole days of Tall Tales to look forward to. We're starting out in the hole already. We've only got 4 more days of Tall Tales to do this week. The real Joe Cruz and I, feel, it's a burden, but we'll bear up on it, won't we, real Joe Cruz?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, and I know you had a tough weekend with no Tall Tales, right?
Tossing and turning, insomnia, lack of appetite, just to name a few of the symptoms.
Yeah, for 3 whole days, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and now you can get back to normal, right? Okay, so let's see. I had a post here. Let's see. Yeah, here's from our poet, the poet laureate of Tall Tales, Andrew. And Andrew says, the only downside to a long weekend ride is the lack of a marvelous show. No Bob and no Joe, no Tales, what a blow. There's nowhere to go or to hide. But the weekend is over. We're rolling in clover and happy as birds who can sing. So welcome back all. Listen up, make a call, and we'll talk about what? Everything. That's from the poet laureate of Tall Tales, named Andrew. Obviously, he's been a part of our international radio listening audience for quite some time, and his poems and his limericks are always really top-notch. And, of course, the benefit there is that people who are regular listeners of Tall Tales are ordinarily inspired to greatness. Correct, real Joe Cruz?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, they're ordinarily inspired to greatness. And certainly Andrew, the poet laureate of Tall Tales, is emblematic of what I'm going to refer to now as the Tall Tales effect. So that if you were to take a random sample of the population, let's take 2 random samples of the population, each one containing 100, 100 folks, and develop as much data as you could about them, their capabilities, their IQ, and all that kind of stuff, right? And then let the control group just wander around on its own for 2 or 3 months, but allow the Tall Tales group to listen to Tall Tales every day for 2 or 3 months, and then run them back through the same tests. I have no doubt as to how those test results would turn out, and they would certainly confirm my bias that listening to Tall Tales is beneficial for everyone out there in our international radio listening audience. So here we are after a long weekend. And once again, if you want to be a part of our international radio listening audience, if you want your voice to go to the 4 corners of our international radio listening audience, 888-8255, 888-TALK. And that's how you do it. So we finished up with the 7th Amendment. The real Joe's on the phone with somebody. I guess he's not. Yeah.
They're looking for Ray.
I beg your pardon?
Someone called looking for Ray.
Looking for Ray Gibson?
Yeah. Well, they probably thought you'd be hanging out at the hottest show in town.
Yeah, well, Ray's on at 6 o'clock.
That's what I told him.
Yeah, Bob's on at 4. But oh well. Actually, all a person has to do is at early in the morning, 6 a.m., set your radio dial to 93.3. You don't need to touch it all day long. It's me and Brian and Rush, Sean, Ray, the whole gang. We're all here, right? Okay, so from the 7th Amendment, as you were the Second Amendment, we go to Zemi Ikotny. And, if there's anything that's predictable, I guess everybody remembers how we do Zemi Ikotny here. I take a look at the It's the editorials from the two papers, and I use my blue pencil here to check out the grammar and the English usage. Try to figure out which one of the two is better. Give that one the blue star. And I can tell you right off the bat, it ain't going to be the Daily News today. Once again, here we go. The era of big oil. Donald Trump, patron saint of fossil fuels. And, of course, the editorial coming from guess where, Real Joe Cruz?
Washington Post?
Yeah. Same thing, USA Today. It's hard to tell the difference, right? Yeah, from USA Today. And it's another, well, let's use up about 450 words to bash Donald Trump again, right? So you're out of the running here for the coveted blue star already, Guam Daily News, because you don't do local Pacific Daily News, because you don't do local editorials. If we want to read USA Today, we'll find USA Today somewhere in some dark corner online. If we're that hard up for reading, you know, if we've read the directions for how to cook spaghetti and all the other reading material of about the same level of interest at home, and we're still looking for something to read, we'll go online and find some USA Today stuff there. And then, you know, the Daily News isn't content to run the USA Today stuff. They gotta make it the Donald Trump Forum. And they even are so bold as to take a shot at Memorial Day in the process. Memorial Day is an extremely important holiday. It's the day of the year where we honor, pay homage to, recognize the sacrifice of all of those people who have been under arms in defense of the United States, who have died in their service to the United States. It's an extremely important day of the year. And, you know, if they're in a country that holds itself out as a secular country, you know, separation of church and state, etc., if there were a state religion, then Memorial Day would be sacred. It's that important to the country and what it stands for. But good old USA Today, they got to take a shot at that. They've got to use that as the basis for taking a shot also. And here's the editorial that they ran on Saturday. Trump will ruin holiday. And they say Memorial Day war pardons are unpardonable. Well, then they're talking about Trump pardoning some people who were convicted in military courts for various crimes, which would make a very good discussion in a separate program. And unbelievable, believe it or not, the USA Today editorial board actually has a point. These are the kinds of things that need to be discussed and should, in a certain amount of time, should be devoted to their discussion. But you don't do it in the context of Memorial Day. Leave Memorial Day alone. Don't salute with somebody else's hat, is the old saying. Don't drag Memorial Day into this to make your point. If you're so feeble that you can't make a point, USA Today, without, in effect, trashing Memorial Day, then go into some other line of business. You know, maybe printing up programs for leftist get-togethers or something like that. But that's what USA Today did on Saturday, and the Daily News ran it. So I looked in my crystal ball to see what the USA Today editorials are going to look like for the next several days, and I have here's how it looks. Tomorrow, bash Donald Trump. Next day, we don't like Donald Trump. Next day, Donald Trump is a jerk. Next day, Trump is not a good president. Next day, boo Donald Trump. You get the picture of what the USA Today editorial policy is? You know, as feeble as they are, and writing editorials. If Donald Trump all of a sudden weren't president, I don't know that the USA Today editorial writers would have anything to say. They seem to be stuck on such a one-track trail. Okay, then we go to the Post. And the title of the Post today is Give the Kids a Break. Yeah. Look at it. Yeah. Now, there's a particular sound that everyone out there in the international radio listening audience should practice on, and it goes like this. Oh. Can you do that, real Joe Cruz?
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, let's try it once here. The title is Give the Kids a Break. Oh. Okay, so here's the editorial. The job of being a principal is a tough one, to be sure. You know, back in the days when I was in high school, real Joe Cruz, one of the things I used to say was, I don't mind the schedule here at the high school. It's the principle of the thing that I don't like. A little play on words there, real Joe Cruz. Where's that drum roll? Okay. The job of being a principal is a tough one, to be sure. The administration at JFK have done a remarkable job over the years. The successes of the students at the school are to be lauded by all. This year's valedictorian at the University of Guam, Sean Clemente, was also the valedictorian at JFK 4 years ago. Wow, how politically incorrect! Being the valedictorian means that you were the top student in your class. What about the poor guy that finished 103rd? What about his self-esteem? Shouldn't, you know, I can see where they created a problem right here. They should have just made everybody the valedictorian. Then no one's feelings would have been hurt. Now, because they didn't do that, I have a feeling that perhaps the principal at JFK might not be a lefty, and he might be more concerned with doing a good job than being politically correct. I don't know. That's just my speculation. Sean Clemente has grown with the help of his school and his parents into a young adult who seems more than ready to tackle the next stage in life. One of the things that makes JFK successful is the required parent participation. Required parent participation. The school emphasizes the need for parents to participate in their child's education. Instead of allowing parents to abdicate their responsibilities in their children's education, which many parents are tempted to do in the face of busy, modern 21st century living, the school has restored the triad between home, school, and student required in a child's proper education and upbringing. Even that is kind of a radical thought nowadays. The home? Here's where we get to the however. Last week, a group of students participated in a senior skip-out. Did they break the rule? Yep. Many participated in the skip-out with their parents' full knowledge of what they were doing and where. Additionally, the students had completed all of their academic requirements, from tests to projects and homework. Nothing remained for them to do. In fact, that week included on-campus activities for seniors that would have taken most of them out of class. The senior skip is a tradition that goes back many years. Most of the people reading this column either participated in it themselves or had children or perhaps even grandchildren who participated. Hopefully, when you did it or when your children did it, you were aware of the when and where. Now, they use the word hopefully wrong here, but it's so common nowadays, I suppose I should not make an issue of it. What they should have said, it is hoped. You know, hopefully comes from the old Tom Swifties. I want to win the game, Tom said, hopefully. He didn't say, hopefully we'll win the game. All right, anyhow, hopefully when you did it or when your children did it, you were aware of the when and where. Considering that this is a tradition, school officials should have anticipated that some students would have considered a senior skip day and warned them that the harshest penalties would be administered if they were caught. Well, if you're, wait a minute, you're going to skip school for a whole day. Is there some way you can skip school and not be caught? Skipping school means you're not in school. It doesn't mean you went to school and you hid out somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Warned them the harshest penalties would be administered if they were caught. Shouldn't that read when they were caught? The students and parents have spoken to the Guam Daily Post. Who have spoken to the Guam Daily Post said there were no warnings from the administrators that participating in this annual tradition was going to result in such a harsh punishment as suspension and the added punishment of being kicked out of National Honor Society and possibly the student body and the class council. That's a big deal because these organizations require much of the students and their parents. Additionally, this is the first offense for most of these students. They aren't habitual truants. Perhaps a little understanding is needed. While many of these students have accomplished so much in athletics, school activities, and academics under a rigorous curriculum, they are, underneath it all, still kids. Many of those who have spoken to the Post are worried that this will actually impact college scholarships. Now, I've commented on this before. I don't think any of our folks here who are trying to get their kids into Ivy League colleges have bribed any of the folks over there. So not getting those scholarships wouldn't be as great a hardship as those who ponied up a multi-$1,000 bribe and then the kid can't get into school. Some of which they've already secured. Some of those students are speaking out, questioning the harshness of the disciplinary action meted out. They've scheduled meetings with school and possibly Department of Education officials. We hope calmness and understanding will prevail. If there's one thing the administrators of John F. Kennedy High School should be extremely proud of, it is that they have helped educate and raise a class of students who dare to dream, and more importantly, act on those dreams without letting anyone stand in their way. Okay, so I'm going to impanel the Tall Tales jury right now. I'm going to ask for a jury ruling on this right after we come back from the break and I give the jury instructions.
Two for one dinner time is back at Ruby Tuesday Guam. That's 2 fresh garden bars, 2 tasty entrees, and a sweet dessert to share for just $25.99. 2 for one dinner time for a limited time at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spittin' truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So here we go. your job out there in the international radio listening audience, do you rule in favor of, let the kids go? You know, kids will be kids. No one told them that there would be punishment if they skipped school. Meaning, I guess they didn't know that it was not okay to skip school, to not come to school without some sort of an excuse. So it sounds like maybe what they're doing is training up these kids to serve on the CCU. We didn't know. So maybe next year, in addition to the valedictorian, they could present the Joey Duenas Award to the kid who shows, I didn't know. So, you know, when kids are young, we hope that the way that the world treats them is a part of the teaching process. So on the one hand, you know, I could see how this could really screw up a kid for a long, long time, maybe the rest of his life. On the other hand, do we want kids, and 17 and 18-year-old kids, to think, well, yeah, that's what the rule says, but, you know, if I break the rules, they're not going to do anything to me. This is not an easy question. He kind of gets you into morality and ethics and child rearing and all kinds of stuff like that. When they had done that, what did they think? I mean, you got to wonder what exactly was on their minds that, okay, we'll skip school because nobody told us that we'll be punished harshly. So did they think there'd be some mild punishment when they came back? Like maybe they'd have to write, I will not skip school 100 times and turn it into their teacher? Well, let's see. Maybe I've got a juror. Joe, are you a juror here? Are you going to announce the verdict to the jury?
I'm just speculating. Maybe they're actually in league with the movie theaters and the advertising for that new movie, Booksmart. It seems to be the plot for Booksmart, where students who are usually good students get in trouble for wanting to do something that's out of their character.
Yeah, maybe that's it. That's a pretty good possibility, Joe. Yeah.
But one more thought is, where's this coming from? Is this coming from the superintendent, or is it coming from truant officer? Who is pushing for this? Because it seems kind of interesting. Because if it's coming from the superintendent, he himself has gotten in trouble for misbehaving, right? So,
for what?
For misbehaving. So I can't imagine it's coming from him. Maybe it's coming from one of his someone below him, and they know that he's going to let them take the lead in this. But anyway, thanks for your time there.
Yeah, I remember that the superintendent was in effect truant for close to a year, but he was getting paid the whole time. Yeah.
And we all paid for it too. For was it two people to do the same job? Was it?
Say again?
I wasn't sure. Were we paying for two of the same position?
No, we didn't hire somebody to fill that position. Somebody, there was an acting superintendent during that time. Going back to your question, the superintendent has said publicly that this is the principal's call. The school principal is responsible for discipline, and apparently the way the rules are set up, an appeal lies with the superintendent of the principal's decision. This adds another complexity to the whole thing, Joe, because let's say the superintendent weighs all the facts and decides, they're just kids, let them go. Does he then undermine the disciplinary authority of the principal, causing kids in the future to say, well, we'll do what we want to, and if the principal disciplines us, we'll just go down and cry to the superintendent?
Were they missing out on actual work, or is it one of those days where they just sit in class and do nothing?
Well, according to the editorial, there really wasn't any heavy-duty work for them to do. that.
Then these are all factors that should be addressed. Well, anyway, thanks, Bob, and I'll just listen. Thank you.
All right, thanks for serving on jury duty. You know, it's usually hard to get folks to serve on jury duty. Maybe it looks like the phone's ringing here, or maybe have another juror chiming in here on this really important question. Let's see who I got here. Yeah, I got a caller here that wants to make his mark. All right. Afternoon, Mark.
Hey, Senator, how you doing?
Hey, it couldn't be better, Mark. I'm back to work at Tall Tales.
Yeah, and my work year is ending.
Your work as a caller to Tall Tales? I hope not.
No, my work year is ending.
Oh, your work year. Okay. So,
this one, it's tough, and I think in some ways they were too harsh. In that, under the guidelines of what is supposed to be done for progressive discipline within DOE, if this was, say, the first time the students did anything of the sort this school year, then a 2-day suspension is out of line.
Okay, interesting approach.
Because under the way DOE has things set up for discipline in the schools, it's supposed to be progressive, and it's supposed to be positive, and they're supposed to be, you know, you don't get the death penalty for spitting, shooting a spit wad.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. And when you say progressive, you're not using progressive in the pejorative sense that I use it here on Tall Tales. That doesn't mean the far left, does it?
No.
If that were the case, then we just let everybody go, right?
Correct. And so they're saying that. Then there's also the other side is, was it consistent with what has been done throughout this school year? For somebody that skipped one day, they immediately got a 2-day suspension, regardless of class, regardless of the time of year. And if this was not done consistently through the school year, then there's a problem. And then the final one, and as you just mentioned with the last caller in the editorial, is anymore, and I can speak from firsthand experience, the last day or so of school, we're supposed to have everything done, graded, and ready to input. So what is now the incentive for the kids to come in and say, learn and be productive on the last few days of school, because they know everything has to be done beforehand?
All good points, Mark. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these students are going to hunt you down and ask you to enter your appearance before the superintendent to plead their case for them.
Yeah, it like I said, there's the progressive discipline. It needs to be consistent with what was done throughout the school year. So if anybody skipped a day of school, caught skipping, if they got a 2-day suspension, then I have no problem. But if it was not done, then yes, I do have a problem.
So you're entering, you're throwing the concept of stare decisis into the decision-making process, right, Mark?
Well, you got to be consistent. You have to be consistent, and it's not something like, well, they're seniors, we're going to teach them a lesson. Well, you're teaching them that you're not being fair and consistent, and they just can't wait to get across the stage, get the diploma, and get the heck out of Dodge.
Here's something on the progressive discipline, Mark. You know, progressive discipline is supposed to be a teaching tool so that for the first infraction, there's a penalty of a particular intensity. Second infraction, the penalty increases. And the learning, or the teachable moment there is, every time you screw up, it's going to get worse. Now, if a kid, if a kid is about to graduate, there's no room there for progressive discipline.
Yeah, and then the other thing within the progressive discipline is there's different levels.
But do you see what I'm saying? The concept of progressive discipline has little applicability for kids who are on their way out of the front door.
And see, and that therein is the problem. And I'll be honest with you, I do have a problem with the discipline plan and the program that is in place. Children, students, young people, old people, they learn from negative consequences, immediate consequences. And within this progressive discipline, it's so hard to get to a negative consequence that by the time it's felt, the kid is like, has done 10 more things before you even get something done because of the first thing.
Gotcha, Mark.
I mean, 2-day suspension for 1 day of school, maybe a 1-day suspension. And especially the fact that there was probably nothing really being productive being done.
Okay, Mark. Thanks a lot for sharing. Those are all really good points. I'm sure that the other jurors are taking your remarks into consideration as they deliberate on this important question. Okay, I got Francis on the line here. Good afternoon, Francis.
Good afternoon, Bob. I was listening to the case here, and I was wondering if it was an elementary, middle school, or a high school level that we're talking about.
High school kids about to graduate.
All right. I think they should just refer these kids over to the counseling department and bring the parents in for a conference. And how long have they been out, you said, Bob?
1 day.
1 day. All right. Well, maybe the parents should be informed immediately, just to make sure that everything's okay, and that find out who was driving, to see if he was speeding or stepping on the brakes or whatever,
Okay. Got it.
All right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I think they should be referred over to the counseling department that the seniors, and parents should be brought in and let them know, and maybe they can take their kids out and check, just to make sure, that they're not going to end up in the maternity ward.
Very good, Francis.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks for calling. Okay, well, let's take a look and see what some of our jurors have said about this important question. Okay, starting out with Nate is horning in here, and James of the Triple J posse, Judge, man, CCU knew not to talk about pay raises, but they did it anyway. What do we do now? So, we expect children in the community to look to adults for examples of good behavior, right? So I guess probably we could get the 40 kids to blame this all on the CCU, blame it all on Joey Duenas. That would be what's called an affirmative defense, right? James Howard, can we call Simon and see what he says? And let's see, Brad Hewitt, you will get a complete line. Let's see, that's another subject here. Talking about one of the board members. And then James Howard's going to give a blue star to Jesse. I haven't even seen Jesse on here today. Maybe that's why they're giving him a blue star, because he hasn't posted anything yet, huh? And then let's see. James Howard comments on Tom, who hasn't. Did you open the Tom line yet?
Yeah, it's been open since the show started.
Okay. And then Brad Hewitt says, this is a blatant disregard for a civilized society. CCU are tyrants, point blank. I guess Brad wants to blame it on the CCU, too. And James Howard, you justice warriors can force this social justice where the sun don't shine, hombre, and meet me at the wall. Okay, we'll take a short break, and I'll go through some more of these, comments on Facebook.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant. Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Legends aren't born, they are made. And during our Jeep Celebration event at Cars Plus and Mighty, you'll receive up to $6,000 in accessories with the purchase of a new Jeep Wrangler, Motor Trend SUV of the Year. Customize your new Jeep to the way you want it. Or how about a new Jeep Grand Cherokee? Save up to $5,000. Or save up to $7,500 on a new Jeep Compass Sport. It's our Jeep Celebration event going on now at Cars Plus and Mighty. Cars Plus, driven by you. Accessory special cannot be combined with other offers. See dealer for details.
Okay, then James Howard comes on. James Howard, one of the Triple J Rangers, says, let them free, Judge. Loophole. Yeah, and that's one thing we want kids to learn, at the end of high school, to learn to look for the loopholes. Don't look for good, straight line, honest behavior. It's better to be looking for the loopholes, especially if you want to get into politics. Brad Hewitt, policy is already a warning. Why need to provide multiple warnings until someone sees discipline? And then Nate horns in and says, what? Actions have consequences? Ad-libbing here, well, that's a radical idea. And I got James Howard, Torn this morning said for the kids to pick up trash. As you were, Tom this morning said for the kids to pick up trash. That would be a good learning experience. Yeah, it would. And, that would be a kind of perhaps progressive discipline that might work. I wonder, though, where the social justice warriors would be if the principal said, okay, you guys, tomorrow morning, come to work in your work clothes because you're going to spend the morning cleaning up this campus. You'd have social justice warriors out there saying, 13th Amendment. We banned slavery in 1865. You can't make the kids do that. They didn't mean it. They're just kids. They've never done that before in their life. How cruel and unusual can you be? 8th Amendment. James Howard, I think the UN Equal Rights Treaty for Youth covers skipping school charge ratified by the Council of Saltiness in 1979. 40 years of peace is the anniversary of slogan. The Council of Saltiness, yeah. And then James Howard says, you guys are awesome. I guess he's talking about the kids that skip school, right? And then Michael Jr. in LaGuardia has declared a mistrial. So I wonder if the principal is going to retry the case or what. Okay, so editorial here certainly met one of the call to action is just as weak as my ruling on the issue. I have not ruled myself. And we would be the first one to say, this is a tough one. You want kids to follow the rules. What they did is really without excuse. On the other hand, they are kids, and we don't want to put a black mark in their book that's going to hold them back for a long, long time for what amounts to a youthful prank. So I'm no worse. I'm no better here than the Post because the Post doesn't rule on it either. So the Post equivocates and says that they hope that calmness and understanding prevail. Well, that's wonderful. So the principal very calmly says, I've reasoned through this, and I'm not going to change my position. And the kids then go to the superintendent, and he says, I have reasoned through this, and I'm going to tell you in a very calm and dignified voice, hell with you. I'm not going to change the decision. That would be okay, because calmness and understanding prevailed. Pretty weak, Guam Daily Post, but you picked a good discussion, a good item for discussion. You framed it pretty well, and you gave us something that we could sink our teeth into, and you didn't have to bash Donald Trump once. So on those bases, here it is, Guam Daily Post. I hope that that editorial writer, the guy down on the editorial board who's supposed to be there today, but went fishing instead, I hope he's not punished too severely for skipping out on the editorial board meeting where this editorial was put together. That takes us up to 113 for the Post and 41 for the Daily News. You got to work harder, Daily News. Try doing some of your own work for a change. Okay, so we got just a few minutes here before the big halftime show that everyone looks forward to, including the real Joe Cruz and I. Let's see, maybe I could take a look at some of the product of the Poet Laureate of Tall Tales here before I get into the card. I'll start the card right after that big halftime show. Okay, Real Joe Cruz, you know I don't like to talk about myself.
But this is about you.
Yeah. This is about me, I have to. And here's what the Poet Laureate says. Bob's tongue might be wagging with critiques. He's not bragging, but never ad hominem attacks. Though he's not a curmudgeon, his words might bludgeon the ornery political hacks. Yeah, the ornery political hacks. Those are the ones, right? Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. This one, now, I know you don't like to talk about yourself either.
True.
Right?
True.
But this time you're going to have to.
It's about me.
Because this one's about you. The real Joe Cruz on the job doesn't snooze, which one of the reasons we praise his diligent work with nary a smirk and call for a hefty pay raise.
Thank you.
That's the poet laureate of Tall Tales. Now, of course, it would be pretty difficult here for us to give you a pay raise because we'd have to go into executive session on the air.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, we'll be right back after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Dangerous weather in Ohio. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
It's like a war zone out here. We need prayer out here bad.
The Red Cross opening emergency shelters in southwest Ohio after what are believed to be two large tornadoes cut a swath of destruction in the Dayton area. Matthew Hoskin says his neighbor barely escaped with her life.
She got the warning and heard that it was just down the street, so she was going to her basement, and she got to her basement stairs, and the wind blew her down the stairs into the basement, and she looked up, and her house was gone.
There are reports of widespread damage around the Dayton area and injuries, 70,000 homes and businesses without power. Earlier, that same storm system ripped through eastern Indiana.
There are trees down on every main road. Even the side streets are all covered with trees, power lines, utility poles are down right now.
That's Todd Harmison with the Madison County, Indiana Emergency Management Agency. Tornadoes also struck southeast Minnesota and northeast Iowa on Monday. President Trump winging his way home from Japan after meeting that country's new emperor and talking trade and North Korea with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The president concluded his trip with a visit to sailors and Marines aboard the USS Wasp.
Our freedom is earned through the blood and sweat and toil and sacrifice of great American patriots just like you. As we honor America's fallen warriors, we pledge our unwavering devotion to all of those who serve our nation in uniform.
Japan is in mourning as a knife-wielding man attacks a group of schoolgirls at a bus stop outside Tokyo. 2 of the girls were killed, 16 injured. Japanese media reports the man then slashed himself in the neck and died. The motive for the attack is unknown. 2 arraignments scheduled in New York today for attorney Michael Avenatti. He's expected to plead not guilty in both cases. This is Fox News.
So what's the deal? Are you still paying for the right to have your checking account at your bank? Well, at Bank Pacific, we think it's our privilege, not our right. That's why we offer My Green Free Checking, where your monthly maintenance checking fees are zero. That's zero. And it comes with a free Visa check card and monthly green e-statements. My Green Free Checking. Bank Pacific today. Because having you as our customer, that's our privilege.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Super Day, Superbook kids! Join us for an afternoon of fun and Bible adventure in Superbook Superstar on Saturday, June 1st, 4:30 p.m. at the Life in the Sun Christian Fellowship, Tamuning, Guam. Exciting games and prizes will be given away, and Gizmo will be there too. For more information, call 477-5487. Admission is free. See you there!
Vice President Mike Pence paid tribute to fallen members of the U.S. Armed Forces on Memorial Day Monday, thanking their loved ones at a ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery and acknowledging that for them, every day is Memorial Day.
Americans gather to honor the lives and deeds of America's greatest heroes, and to assure their families that we will never forget and we will never fail to honor the service and sacrifice of their loved ones.
The Vice President placed a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldiers to remember the dead service members whose remains haven't been identified. He also observed a moment of silence. In Indianapolis, someone spotted a suitcase in a creek. Police were called. They pried it open and found a body inside. All they are saying so far is that it is not a child's body. No other details available. A Colorado climber has died shortly after summiting Mount Everest, achieving his dream of scaling the highest peaks on each of the 7 continents. Christopher Coolish died Monday at a camp below the summit during his descent. His brother says the 62-year-old Boulder attorney had just reached the top of Everest with a small group over the weekend. About a half-dozen climbers died on Mount Everest last week. Lawmakers in gun-friendly Texas have approved spending to promote gun safety.
A $250 billion state budget package approved by Texas lawmakers Sunday includes a provision opposed by the National Rifle Association and gun rights activists. The measure has language funding a $1 million public safety campaign on gun storage. The bill puts Republican Governor Greg Abbott in a unique position, as he could veto the measure or ignore the influential NRA and sign the legislation into law. Abbott does have line-item veto authority and could remove the program without affecting the budget. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
And in New York, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
If you're driving, chances are you'll need gas soon. And by the growl in your tummy, a trip to the grocery store too. But don't just buy gas and groceries without getting double miles. Instead, apply for the new United Credit Card from First Hawaiian Bank and start earning double miles towards your next trip. Gas, groceries, getaway. With the new United Credit Card, apply at FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank, member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about the food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice.
Yeah, what a great halftime show. You know, I really have a soft spot in my heart for those members of our international radio listening audience who had to go 3 days without attending and watching and observing and enjoying our halftime show. But we're back now. We're going to be here tomorrow, and we're going to be here Thursday and Friday. Tall tales all the way. I noticed that I got a post here during the halftime show. I guess Elwin Champako Kitano took some time out from enjoying the halftime show to put this post up. Elwin is a regular member of our international radio listening audience, so even though we're going to move into the card, I will read Elwin's post. Elwin said, with regard to the skipping issue, we must determine what our ultimate school-wide objective is: good behavior and discipline, or academic success and meeting content standards. Behavior can change, but negative penalties can last a long time and hurt these young people. It's a hard decision, but it must be made with this in mind. Well, that's a pretty wise collection of words there, Elwin. The only thing I might say, though, is that good behavior and discipline are not antagonistic to academic success and meeting content standards. In fact, I would submit that good behavior and discipline create the foundation for academic success and meeting content standards. But I think your point is that there has to be a balance between those two. So pretty well said, Elwin. Okay, from there we go to the card, and this is what I got on the card for today. I've got Tina Rose Munya Barnes versus CPS. I've got Joey, I've got Joey and Invincible Ignorance versus Ratepayers. Just more of the continuing saga of the CCU, which I guess I ought to, rather than call it an event on the card, I should label it Once Upon a Time. Once upon a time, the government created a CCU, and it had 5 members, etc., or perhaps something like this. And it came to pass that there was a CCU, because it seems like a fairy tale. It just goes on and on and on and on. I wonder if C.K. Rowling could somehow blend this into the Harry Potter series. Anyhow, that's the next item on the card. Then I've got Therese Terlahi versus the United States Marine Corps. I've got Robert Underwood versus Mike San Nicolas. And I've got John Brown versus Roseanne Jones. And then I have Jesse versus Perfecto Yasai. And this is actually just a continuation of Francis versus Trini, Bavacqua versus A Good Idea, Melvin Wampat versus Apathy, all that stuff. And then the last item here is Red State versus Gillette. And, of course, since Gillette's in it, you know that my commentary is going to be razor sharp. Yeah. And if you take me on this one, you might win. But, by gosh, it's going to be a close shave. So don't get all lathered up while you're waiting. We'll get there sooner or later. Starting out with Tina versus CPS, Child Protective Services. And this is a piece that appeared in the Daily News, a short piece, Public Policy Internship Accepting Applications. High school and college students interested in public policy can apply for an ongoing internship whose previous members have gone on to Ivy League schools and leading national think tanks. Now, I don't know that any of these folks ever made it to the Tall Tales think tank, but be that as it may. And this is according to a press release from Speaker Tina Munya Barnes. In 2011, Barnes and Senator Castro implemented the Public Policy Institute program to give selected students hands-on experience in policy writing and government operations. Well, this is a pretty cryptic press release, but I think what they're trying to say is that high school students can sign up to be interns at the Guam legislature. In other words, they come down to the legislature, they're not on the payroll, and they're given things to do, and it's supposed to be a learning experience for these interns. Well, if they're high school students and they're under 18 years old, I would think that CPS would be interested in this, because asking children to come down and hang around the Guam legislature during, quote, working hours, I'm using that term very loosely, actually could very well be construed as child abuse. I don't know what valuable thing young kids could learn hanging around there. So that's Tina versus CPS. And then I go from there to the continuing saga of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. And I'm going to start out with Commissioner Joey Duenas, and what I have labeled here as invincible ignorance. I even have a workup on invincible ignorance somewhere. I thought I did. Well, in any case, invincible ignorance is one of the doctrines of the Catholic Church. And it goes like this. A person who does not embrace Catholicism is probably not going to go to heaven. In fact, you're sure he's not going to go to heaven if he understands. Now, there are people who don't understand Catholicism, have never been exposed to them, so this would not work a disadvantage against them because it comes under the heading of invincible ignorance. In other words, because they weren't aware of the salvation promised by Catholicism, they can't be held for not to blame for not embracing Catholicism. Now, I don't know that I looked through our statutes here pretty rigorously, And I didn't find anywhere in our statutes that we have recognized the defense of invincible ignorance for public officials, like holding meetings behind closed doors and not understanding how the Freedom of Information Act works. As a matter of fact, as far as the Freedom of Information Act works, if you don't do what you're supposed to, it can cost you $1,000. So I've got something from the Daily News of last Friday. The commission has discussed employee salaries behind closed doors during the past decade and possibly back to when the commission was created. That seemed to be the common practice, Duenas said. The commission did not know those secret salary discussions violated the open government law, Duenas told the legislature's Power and Energy and Utilities Committee during an oversight. I was never informed by any attorney that there was a provision that required salaries and discussion on salaries be conducted only in open session, said Duenas. The CCU was created in 2002. Until just this last incident, nobody ever wrote to us. The Attorney General never wrote to us. Nobody ever said anything to us. Yeah, well, given my experience, even when people write to you, you don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. 5 members of the CCU. From the Post. The CCU chairman said the Consolidated Commission on Utilities discussing salary issues in closed-door sessions ever since he became a member of the commission in 2009. I was never informed by any attorney that there was a provision discussion of salaries to be conducted only in open session. No one ever pointed out the law to me or anybody else. No one stepped forward. No legislative committee ever questioned us about it. So it's our fault.
How dare they?
It's our fault for not telling Joey.
It is.
Yeah, and I suppose it's my fault because Tall Tales didn't start until just a couple of years ago. Where was I when all of these things were going on? I didn't tell him.
You're responsible, sir.
Mea culpa, mea culpa. Yeah. Very irresponsible on my part. But now let's take this and extrapolate it. I was never informed by any attorney that there was a provision of discussing salaries in open session. Nobody ever pointed out the law to me or anybody else. Now, how does that work for those kids at JFK? Nobody ever came into their classrooms and said, kids, if you skip school, you could be suspended for 2 days. No one ever did that. Not the Attorney General, no one from the legislature, probably not the principal, definitely not anybody from CCU. So how could we hold them to account when no one told them? And of course, in the 21st century, the only way a person can know anything is if someone tells him, right? There's no other way to gain anything that looks like knowledge. At one time, I might have seen a little bit of reasonableness in that argument because it hasn't been that long. It's probably only been, since the 27th legislature. It's only been since the 27th legislature that you could go online and go to Guam Compiler of Laws and see the entire body of statute law right there online. That law was passed in the 27th Guam legislature to take the compiler away from the legislative branch, bring it over to the courts. We had a compiler of laws named Serge Kanga, who did an outstanding job of getting all of the codes up online, and it's there. And you don't have to be a cybernetic whiz to look something up online. There's even a search engine. So if you go to Guam Code Annotated Searchable, you're given a box, and you can type in the word that you're looking for. So it's not like it was before 2005, where if you wanted to find out what the law was, you're probably going to, if you weren't a lawyer or weren't close to a lawyer, so you could go to his office and pull out the books, you'd have to make a trip down to the law library, stumble around with trying to find the right book, trying to find the right page in the right book, hoping that that book had been updated, and then maybe you could have some idea what the law was. It's not like that anymore. It's right there. It's as easy to get a hold of Guam law as it is to get a hold of baseball scores or football scores. So you would think that a person who is going to have a government job, the first thing he would do would go online and find the organic statute for his agency. If you're going to go to work for the Department of Education, go to Title 17 and find the chapter on Department of Education and read the whole thing. It won't take you that long. And then if you don't know what else to do, go to some of the general provisions like the Open Government Law, the so-called Mini Hatch Act, the Freedom of Information Act, and some of these. If you're going to be on a board or a commissioner, you're going to be a director or a responsible public official, do that before you're ever sworn in. If you do nothing other than look at the table of contents for the Guam Code annotated, you'll increase your knowledge of the law tenfold in about 5 minutes. So the doctrine of invincible ignorance, I think, was probably effectively repealed in the year 2005, Joey. So that's where we are. And then, unfortunately, we've got another commissioner who has run afoul of the open government law also. Getting mixed up in my papers here. Yeah, this is a story that appeared in today's Post. Prior counsel advised CCU on executive meetings. At least one member of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities was made aware by prior legal counsel that Guam law prohibits discussion about pay in executive session. Commissioner Simon Sanchez was the chairman of the CCU between 2003 and 2014. The Guam Daily Post obtained a series of emails between Sanchez and Sam Taylor, the former Waterworks legal counsel, which took place in September of 2014. The men were discussing a recommendation for executive session involving GWA. Sanchez noted that personnel matters regarding one employee, as well as their evaluation and possible change in pay, were up for discussion. Evaluations are okay since they relate to performance, Taylor wrote. Stop. Wrong, Sam Taylor. Dead wrong. Yeah, Sam Taylor apparently was a victim of the old myth. It's a personnel matter. So, and this is part of the problem, you know, when you keep saying something that's wrong over and over again and you don't take the time to check it out, it then becomes your truth. Taylor goes on to say, however, as a reminder, Guam law prohibits discussion about pay in executive session, as though the two could be separated, as though you could separate an employee's, the merit of an employee for a raise without discussing his performance. It's just silly. But Tall Tales wasn't on the air in 2014, so I suppose they could claim we just didn't know. Taylor then noted the section of the law barring closed-door discussions on pay adjustments. The CCU discussed pay raises for power and water utility executives and attorneys during closed-door meetings in November of 2018. Those raises have since been rescinded following a determination from the Attorney General that the adjustments were void as pay cannot be discussed in executive session. While the commission has acknowledged the error, the members have stated there is no intention to violate the law. Now, I wonder if the kids at JFK could say that. We didn't intend to we were just going to have a good time. We didn't intend to violate the rules. And that they were working from legal advice. Now, that's true. They had 2 lawyers there who actually were in the executive session, who actually got pay raises in the executive session, and neither one of them did this. Hold up, time out. We can't do this. We can't discuss salary increases in executive session. Hello! Didn't happen. So, yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense. While the commission, let's see, Sanchez stated in a special meeting in May that the CCU was advised executive discussions on pay raises were proper. So Simon Sanchez is saying not only did the lawyers tell him not to, the lawyer said, yeah, it's okay, executive, yeah, salary, it's a personnel matter. Can you say that, real Joe Cruz? It's a personnel matter.
It's a personnel matter.
Have you ever gone to law school?
No, sir.
I guess you wouldn't have to. You seem to have a firm grasp on the law.
I got it down packed, huh?
Very good, yeah. When asked about the guidance from Taylor nearly 5 years ago, Sanchez said he, quote, forgot about the emails, but did ask current legal counsel about the procedure during the meeting in November 2018. If I had remembered, I would have brought it up, Sanchez said, but I did recall there was a reason to be clear, and that I asked legal counsel that were present, is this appropriate, or do we just have to come out and say, as discussed in executive session? I don't recall whether they said no or if they said nothing, but at no time during the executive session did they say what Mr. Taylor said. Now, a little free legal advice, counsel. You should have not only said no, you should have said, hell no. That's why lawyers get the big bucks. Now, sometimes that means that you have to tell your client something that he may not like, may not be interested in hearing. And that's why we have the attorney-client privilege, so that you could give completely candid advice to your client. If he wants to disregard his advice, your advice, okay. But according to Simon Sanchez here, you guys didn't blow the whistle. It took the media to blow the whistle on the commission, and it didn't work out very well. Sanchez said he believed during the meeting following Taylor's 2015 email that the CCU did publicly announce the employee and their salary. Now, once again, I'm wondering, was the earlier said it was one employee, but then we're talking about their salary. So, real Joe Cruz, do you think it was a Siamese twin?
Could be.
But we're not. We're supposed to say conjoined twins, right?
Yeah, I was about to correct you, but
thank you very much.
I don't like to correct you, sir.
Well, that's your job.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, well, but that's your job, real Joe Cruz. I don't want you to behave like you're a lawyer in an executive session. All right. That CCU did publicly announce the salary and the employee and their salary after coming out of executive session, but he's not certain. I'd have to check, Sanchez said. He said he also does not recall how subsequent pay raises were handled or if they were given. From the advice from Mr. Taylor, I don't recall what subsequent executive sessions occurred, whether raises were then paid and whether we did it properly. But I clearly asked for a clarification from Taylor, and he minded us under no circumstances. And I hope and we assume that we followed his advice, but I'll have to go back and look at it. It's unfortunate that this has happened, and it's our responsibility to know the law. Mr. Taylor clearly gave clear advice, and unfortunately last November we didn't follow it. even though our two legal counsels were in the room. Very interesting. And so Simon is owning up to what happened, and unfortunately, there's another, as we say on Guam, pandanus box that is opened up. How many times did the CCU go into executive session to give salary increases? Because every single time they did, it was void ab initio. So what, if anything, is Joey Duane is going to do about that? Call up and say, please don't say that anymore. I want people to forget it. And along the same lines, has the CCU provided bonuses for employees in the past? Because we now know that bonuses are illegal. Okay, I'm coming up on the seventh inning stretch, Kellis. So right after the seventh inning stretch, we're going to go straight to Kellis.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
So Kellis has been patiently swinging a couple of bats there in the on-deck circle, waiting to step into the batter's box and take his cut. Go ahead, Kellis.
I just had a quick question. I said, unless in executive session they don't take meeting minutes, wouldn't the minutes show if the question was posed to the counselors present?
Yes, that's correct, Kellis, and I guess that's why everyone is so anxious to see the minutes of that meeting and listen to the recording.
Ah, see, I didn't know that they were trying to get to the meetings. It's like going, you would think that they would be on the meeting minutes.
Yeah, well, the statute says that meetings are to be kept, and there's also statute that says that the meetings are to be posted on the websites of the two utilities, and the statute also says that the electronic recording is to be posted on the public auditor's website 7 days after the meeting. So
maybe it hasn't been 7 days after the meeting yet.
Maybe not.
If they had their meeting on leap year, they'd have to wait 7 years for it. So was it, the 29th of February?
That's kind of like some people use the term working day. So if you're talking about a working day for the government of Guam, that could go on forever.
There you go.
So, yeah, anyhow, those things are supposed to be available. And I submitted a FOIA, as did several others, asking for those very things. And true to form, the commission said, no, you can't have those things because they're personnel matters. So, they made one gigantic mistake, and that wasn't enough. They had to make another one, showing that they really don't understand what their obligations as members of a board, of a commission are, Kellis.
Okay, I got to go. My phone's about to die where I'm at. I just wanted to call about that. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for calling. So, if... I suppose it's always easy to use hindsight, but if, after this had been discovered, if the CCU had published the minutes and published that recording immediately, would we still be talking about this? I don't think so, because It's the same old thing as Richard Nixon and Watergate. You know, there was a break-in at Watergate. Richard Nixon had a pretty good invincible ignorance defense. Richard Nixon could have come out and said, some people that work for me were overzealous on their own accord. I don't condone it. I'm going to take action. I'll take full responsibility. That would have been it. Instead, you know, we all know what happened. The harder he tried to cover it up and make him, you know, and make it go away, the worse it got for him. And the CCU, if the CCU had just come out and said, yeah, we screwed up, and we're going to give you the minutes, and we're going to give you that electronic recording, and we're not going to do this anymore. Anytime anybody says the word salary, we'll have a rule that we'll never use the word salary and executive session in the same sentence. And if any commissioner has the temerity to use the word salary and executive session in the same sentence, we'll take them outside and wash their mouth out with soap, because we're just not going to do that anymore. If that had happened, you know, I'd had to find something else to warble about all these different programs. But the CCU just, you know, it's the old Will Rogers law of holes. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So now I'm really curious, how many other raises did the CCU do in executive session that are void ab initio? And how many other employees received illegal bonuses? And even more curious, and what is Joey Duenas going to do about it? What, if anything, is Joey Duenas going to do about it? Okay, so that's that item on the card. I next go to Senator Therese Terlahi versus the United States Marine Corps. And here's what this news story says that appeared in the Daily News. Residents should be able to view culturally significant sites before they disappear from military construction, Senator Therese Terlahi said Friday. Our people. Now this is classic dog whistle politics. Our people, classic dog whistle politics, meaning our people, right? Classic dog whistle politics. Our people deserve to experience the historical sites as you get to experience them, as you all get to see them among the trees, the mountains, the seas. I guess she's heard a lot too much of the poet laureate here, Andrew. Maybe she's striking for the position of poet laureate of Tall Tales. Our people deserve the experience, the historical sites as you get to experience them, as you all get to see them among the trees, the mountains, the seas. Terlahi said, I want to see that. I wish I could have seen that. At the 7th Annual 2011 Programmatic Agreement Workshop, the Guam State Historic Preservation Office and senators reiterated a need for greater access to indigenous land. Now, here's a definitional problem. What is indigenous land? Indigenous land. I might have to send a FOIA to Senator Therese Terlahi if this is a quote and ask her for a definition of indigenous land. I'm a little bit familiar with the word indigenous, and it's usually used as far to refer to animate objects, animal species, human beings, etc. So we could say that the pigs and deer that we see tearing around on our island are not indigenous to Guam. In other words, they were introduced from outside. And the same with the carabao, which has kind of become one of the island symbols. It certainly is at the Bank of Guam. Carabao was not indigenous. When the first Chamorros got here 3,500 years ago, there weren't carabaos pulling ready to hook up to carts. There were no deer. There were no pigs. Those were all brought in by the Spanish. And then, of course, the nationalist element of our population makes a lot of the fact that Chamorros are the indigenous people of Guam. And in that context, it doesn't mean that Chamorros have always been here. It just means that they were here first. So these are the kind of the common meanings of the word indigenous. But in this story here, senators reiterated a need for greater access to indigenous land. Now, if I were to get out my blue pen here, which I have handy all the time, and get my English teacher hat out and put it back on, is indigenous land that is not native to the island of Guam? Is it land that was brought in from somewhere else? Or was not brought in from somewhere else? Indigenous land. Now, when you have something like this in your writing, it really detracts from everything you're trying to say in your writing. It's kind of like saying, I'm a mathematician, and we're going to study a formula today. And the first element of the formula is that 2x times, 2x times, I better make something a little similar. How about 2 times 4 equals 9? That's the first, or multiplication tables. 7 times 7 is 52. So that's the first multiplication table I want you to learn. Now, if I say that, whatever else I say about mathematics, you're going to say, I don't know. This guy can't even multiply. So I'm going to take what he says seriously. And then the article goes on to say, historic preservation, which refers to the Guam State Historic Preservation Office, also requested construction of a Guam Heritage Center and nomination of more historic sites for National Historic Landmark status. The requests were received by the military on Friday morning at the Guam Museum. Now, if the military members who were at the Guam Museum on Friday morning were as baffled by what Senator Tlahi and Historic Preservation said as I am, I don't think much good is going to come out of that. This article kind of follows along with an earlier article called Tlahi and Marsh. And is that Marsha Kelly Marsh, Kelly Titano? Anyhow, you know what I mean. And it's called Rough Road as Military Buildup Projects Are in, quote, full force. 4 military projects that may impact the island's historical sites are well underway, Marine Corps Activity Guam said Thursday. I wish that the Daily News would stop doing that. Only people can say something. Organizations can't say something. A spokesman for the Marine Corps Activity Guam said, or Colonel Smuckahukowitz of the Marine Corps Activity Guam said, but I can't imagine a Marine Corps activity as an anthropomorphic entity. Anyhow, MC Activity Guam said Thursday, and Guam leaders are concerned about protecting the island's history. Protecting the island's history. Now, that conjures up the mental image of we've got a shelf full of books, history books, the history of Guam, and someone's coming along and saying, I'm going to burn up all those history books. Somebody else says, no, you're not going to burn any of them. I'm going to protect Guam's history. Construction has started on 3 of the projects and will start on the 4th soon, military representatives told community leaders at a workshop Thursday. Artifacts have been uncovered during construction at all 4 sites. The projects are part of the military buildup in which as many as 5,000 Marines from Okinawa and elsewhere will be transferred to a new base, Camp Bloss, as part of a larger realignment of U.S. military forces in the Asia-Pacific region. Going on here to the next part of Terlahi and Marsh versus USMC. Linda Uggan, Division Supervisor with the State Historic Preservation Office, and Senators Therese Terlahi and Kelly Marsh posed the possibility of changing construction plans or preserving historic discoveries on site based on the inadvertent discoveries. Data recovery is not enough, they said. So I have this, again, this mental image of Senators Terlahi and Marsh, I suppose, singing as a duet. Can you help me with this? When I cue you, can you say, data recovery is not enough? Let's try to sing it, okay? I'll do this when I want you to start. Data recovery is not enough.
Data recovery is not enough.
Well, that's what the story said. Because it's Senator Therese Terlahi and Kelly Marsh saying, pose the possibility of changing construction plans or preserving historic discoveries on site based on the inadvertent discoveries. Data recovery is not enough, they said. So they must have said it in unison, and I hope they said it to music as well as the real Joe Cruz and I did. Forever after to be known as the Tall Tales Duet. So every time we run across a news story that reports that 2 public officials said the same thing at the same time, we will call the Tall Tales Duet back into action. And then Terlahi said, we don't want just the data. We want the historical sites. Uggan asked if there is criteria to halt construction altogether. We keep discovering things. We keep discovering things, Uggan said. You want to know what Uggan said?
We keep discovering things?
You got half of it. You only got half of it.
Uggan said,
we keep discovering things. We keep discovering things.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so do you know what Uggan said?
We keep discovering things. We keep discovering things.
Right, right. Can't we just stop? So the quality of the writing here leaves a lot of guesswork, but I think what Uggan, Terlahi, and Marsh are saying is we've been finding things since you've been clearing the land, and we'd just like you to stop all of this construction so that we could keep the things that we've been finding. Now, I just have to add parenthetically here, what organization has perhaps been the greatest benefactor of those who would preserve historic relics, probably in the history of the island of Guam? The answer is the United States military. Because where is all this stuff going on? It's on land owned by the military, right? It's not downtown Tamuning or somewhere in Upper Santa Rita or someplace like that. So the military has kept this land off limits for a long, long time, and now that the jungle is being cleared, things are being discovered. And now that things are being discovered, these 3 here are saying, can't we just stop? Do we have to really do this? This is unlikely, the military said. Now, that wouldn't have been a person. The military said. We can't name. I think probably it's a personnel matter. So so we can't say this is unlikely. Colonel so and so said, or Sergeant such and such said. Okay, so I got about 10 more minutes here to finish up on Terlahi and Marsh versus the USMC.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 Data to Go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is Data to Go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
So here we are, heading down the home stretch here. You just heard the call to the post at Churchill Downs, Lexington, Kentucky. At the Tall Tales Kentucky Derby, the horse that crosses the finish line wins, not the horse that's the one that's most sensitive to the feelings of the other horses. Just thought I'd mention that again. So we're dealing with an item on the card here. It's Marsh and Titano versus the USMC, and it's another example, of really poor reporting and slanted reporting, because we've got direct quotes from Senator Marsh and Titano to include the Marsh-Titano duet, very faithfully reenacted by the Tall Tales duet. They're mentioned by name, they're quoted directly, and then we get a little farther down into the story, and the other party here is, quote, the military. This faceless group of, as the article paints them, this faceless group of insensitive boogeymen that that don't have person or personality, etc. They're just referred to as the military. This is unlikely, the military said, due to the pressing needs of the buildup. Quote, we will preserve in place for laddie shards from a pot that was dropped. That's not going to happen because I know the ranges have to be where they are, and that's not going to force us to reconsider this, said Al Borja, a person with a name, an environmental director with Marine Corps activity, Guam. It's not that preservation in place is impossible, but it affects something as important as the firing lanes and the configuration of the range. I would say it's very unlikely that we'll preserve it in place. I have to say, 2018-2019 has been a rough road, Uggan said. This is Linda Uggan, the State Historic Preservation Office. The projects have been slow in the beginning, but now they're just coming full force. Members from the military, State Historic Preservation Office, Guam Preservation Trust, Senate and Governor's Office met Thursday at the Guam Museum for the 7th Annual 2011 Programmatic Agreement Workshop. The Build-Up's 2011 Programmatic Agreement identifies historical properties, explores the military's potential effects on them, and lays guidelines to mitigate these effects. It will remain in effect for the duration of the build-up. We need to continue to preserve what we have left, Uggan said, preserving every little ounce every little bit of our indigenous people that provided to this land, gave us this land, must be preserved in any way, shape, or form. Now, I hate to use the D word too loosely, but what Uggan said there, Uggan is an official of the territory of Guam, borders on the D word, demagoguery. It's an appeal to emotion, not an appeal to reason. Every little ounce, every little bit of our indigenous people that provided to this land, gave to this land, must be preserved in any way, shape, or form. This is a kind of similar in its operation to the old, well, you know, if it saves just one life, it's worth all of everything that we have to do in order to accomplish it. So this comes up quite often when you're talking about cars and traffic safety, et cetera. You younger folks wouldn't remember this, but there was a time when cars didn't have seat belts. And then seat belts were kind of an extra cost option that young guys bought them to show off because it meant that they took their cars to the drag races. And then we came to the point where everybody had to have a seat belt and everybody had to fasten a seat belt. Older folks, of course, didn't like it. And the rap was, well, yeah, you know, it's inconvenient, but if this seat belt law just saves one life, then it's worth it. As though it's never practicable to do a balancing test. And I'll give you example of what I mean there. If the speed limit on all Guam highways were 5 miles per hour and it were vigorously enforced, how much do you think it would reduce the number of traffic fatalities here on the island, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm not sure, sir.
It'd probably take them close to zero, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If everybody had to drive 5 miles an hour?
Yeah, I think we'd be pretty safe.
Yeah, now if the speed limit were 5 miles an hour, what effect would that have on you?
Man, I might be late for work.
How long would it take you to get to work?
An hour.
Yeah. It would take an hour to get, it would be a real inconvenience, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But if it saved one life, it would be worth it. In other words, we never enter, there are some things when we want to have this demagogic effect, there are some things where we never even consider a balancing test, and we phrase our proposition in such a manner that anyone who would oppose it is seen to favor the unfavorable outcome. In other words, the loss of life in my analogy. Or in this particular case, preserving every little ounce, every bit, without any consideration of any sort of a balance there. Well, if it's something that weighs 2 milligrams, then we should stop the entire Marine Corps buildup because we must save every little ounce. Okay, well, it's really good to be back in Tall Tales again. Unfortunately, I only got 3 more days this week, but the Tall Tales duet will be back tomorrow. The Real Joe Cruz and I will be there here then. We'll see you then. Adios.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
Awaiting first light to assess tornado damage. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.